Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Be over here. Since you're from these parts or close by.
Yeah, I went right through there.
You two can
Thank you all.
records as bears.
Thank you all for joining us. I'd like to call the 1:30 meeting of the North Carolina Local Government Commission of June 1st to order. First, we'll have a roll call of members by Cindy to determine our quorum.
Skip on it. Secretary Marshall, we see you.
Here.
Secretary Penny, are you on the line? Ms. Harris? Mr. Bass, we see you. Mr. Munn, we see you. Did I hear Mayor Paget?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Philbeck, we see you. Treasurer Swalwell. Auditor Wood, are you on the line? Secretary Penny or Ms. Harris? Not yet.
I see
4, 6.
Secretary Marshall Cindy on the line.
No,
Sorry.
sorry, I meant Ms. Harris and Secretary Penny, I'm sorry. Okay, we have 2, 4, 6 in attendance. That is a quorum.
Thank you. Cindy, can you, now that we've had a roll call, can you do a roll call of LGC staff, please?
Yes. I see Sharon Edmondson is here. Tim Ramaki is here in person. Susan McCullen is here in person. Jennifer Wimmer?
Here.
Thank you. I am here. Louis Andrews?
Here.
Thank you. Debbie is in the room. Debbie Tomasco. Any other LGC staff on the line? Okay, and I see Ms. Harris has joined. Welcome.
Good afternoon.
Do you have any meeting procedures or housekeeping items you'd like to go over?
Yes, thank you. This is Cindy Aiken, counsel for the LGC, and we are recording today's meeting by using GoToWebinar. The written minutes, however, will still continue to be the official record of the meeting. Any technology failures or problems that prevent us obtaining a useful recording will have no effect on validity of actions taken by the LGC. I want to remind everybody, well, not everybody in membership is mostly online, but here in the Dogwood conference room, our microphones, hello, Auditor Wood has joined us. Thank you. And microphones in this conference room will pick up all the sound, including any side conversations. Now, this is important, especially since we have so many of you on the line. We'll try our best to just have one person at a time speaking, and I'm speaking to myself as well. Pausing while we Anyway, we need to try to stop or avoid cross-talking or talking over each other and sidebar conversations because it's pretty difficult for people listening remotely to follow along. So we'll try real hard, one person at a time. And remember to mute yourself when you're not speaking. Please identify yourself when you are speaking, including participants who will be calling in, who are called in from units to answer questions. We need to if everyone okay,
I'm working on it.
Is the audio going out? Anybody else here? Okay.
Are they still working on the audio?
Seems to be. I can't hear anything.
How about now?
All right.
I heard something
Can
there.
you all
I
can
can
you all
hear.
hear me?
Yes.
I can hear.
Can you see me?
No.
No.
I cannot see you.
Are we good?
Yes, sir. I believe everybody can hear us now.
Can you hear us now? Thumbs up? Okay, thank you.
Secretary Penny's on the line. I can see you, but I can't be seen for some reason.
Thank you, Secretary Benny.
I'll
Actually, I've been on the line all along.
Okay.
continue with our conflict of interest statement. Members, please take a moment to review the agenda. Does anyone have an actual potential or appearance of conflict of interest regarding the matters that are before us? Hearing none, I'll accept.
Again, I will restate that I live in Johnston County, but I am not a part of the Johnston County water system either.
Thank you. So noted. And without objection, if somebody makes a motion in a second for efficiency purposes, we'll consider those to be yes votes. Do I hear a motion to approve the May 4th meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Sorry, is that Mr. Paget?
Yes.
Thank you.
Second?
Second, Viola Harris.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
I think there was one change that I think needed to be noted. On the discussion about atrium, and I'm trying to get to that exact page. It's a minor change. It says necessary and expedient. It should be necessary or expedient. I remember it was line 7 on that page, but I'm going quickly to that page.
And page 3.
No, it wasn't. It was about atrium in the page 52.
Without objection, we'll accept that technical amendment to the meeting minutes, assuming that mirrors the statute. So,
What was the page, Ms. Harris?
This is
I was
Penny.
looking at a different page where I saw it.
This is Penny, and that's on page 52, line 7. The statute says necessary or expedient, does not say necessary and expedient.
okay. All right. As amended, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Move down the clerk to call the roll.
Minute. Auditor Wood,
Aye.
Secretary Marshall,
Aye.
Secretary Penny,
Aye.
Mr. Bass,
Aye.
Mr. Munn,
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck,
Aye.
Treasurer Falwell.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next, we'll turn the meeting over to Sharon to present a unit update for Wilkesboro, and who maybe turn the meeting over to Susan.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. The first item on our agenda today is the town of Wilkesboro. And I believe we have Mayor Mike Inscore, Manager Ken Nolan, Assistant Manager and Finance Officer Bob Ernest, and Tim Lyons with Malden and Jenkins CPAs, the auditors for the town, are all on the phone. This letter concerns the completion of the 19 and 20 fiscal year annual audits that are required, as you all know, under 159. We recently received the 2018 audit from the town, and I am getting conflicting information from the town and the auditor as to the timeline for completion of 2019 and 2020. Both, of course, are late at this point, with the 19 being significantly late. So what I'm hearing from the town is that everything for 19 will be done by June 30th. What I'm hearing from the auditor is maybe, but not likely at this point. It is June the 1st. I don't, unless they've gotten it just in the last few days, the auditor did not have a balanced trial balance. And everything, the statements had not been written yet. Now, the town does employ a third party to help prepare for the audit, and another faction of the Malden and Jenkins firm is going to actually write the financial statements. They are a big enough firm that they can do that without having issues with Yellow Book. However, this was somewhat similar to what happened with 18. We would be told one thing by the town and something slightly different by the auditor as far as when the financial statements would be completed. So what I would really like to do is to have everybody agree on a reasonable timetable of when these two audits can be finished. And also tell us what changes are being made to prevent this from continuing to happen with the town. So again, we have folks from the town and from the audit firm on the phone. If y'all would like to say anything, or then I'll turn it over to commission members for questions.
This is the treasurer. I'd like for the auditor as well as the town to confirm or deny what Karen has said. Is there a conflict? Is there not a conflict? And then we'll get on to the meat of what she's asking. So we'll start with the town first.
Chair, Mr. Ernest and Mr. Lyons are connected, but Mr. Nolan hasn't connected with a PIN, and I do not see the mayor on the list.
So
And
this is Bob Ernest with the town of Wilkesboro. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So we are, I've got the three of us in one conference room. So we're sitting around a speaker, myself,
We lost your audio, Bob. Tim, are you still on the phone?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
it's the town or the auditor?
This is the auditor. The town seems to be having difficulty with their audio. Can you give us what you think is a realistic expectation of when we can expect the 19 audit?
Sharon, what I would love to hear is an answer to the treasurer's question. Are they in conflict or not?
That was Auditor Wood speaking. Auditor Wood speaking here. Again, I'd like to hear, I want to hear exactly the answer to the treasurer's question. Are they in conflict or not?
Hey Sharon, this is Tim with Malden and Jenkins. When you say in conflict, are we talking like, are we having some sort of an issue or disagreements with management, or is this like an independence question?
Issues with management.
Yes.
Yes.
One
issues
says,
with management.
one says it's going to be due at a certain time, this Auditor Wood again. One of you says it's going to be due, I think the city says everything's going well, going to have it done. Y'all say it isn't. Which is it?
Understood. Apologize for the confusion there. No, we, in the last several days, have been able to tick off several of the things that were on that list. We have a balanced trial balance now. We've gotten some things from the town. I'm actually going up to the town next week and we'll be on site for several days to begin making progress on this. I would love to have it done by the end of the month, but just knowing the different reviews that we have to conduct internally to complete an audit file, review a completed financial report, and issue an audit opinion, June the 30th is tight for us, but certainly not something that I don't think we couldn't get out in July at this point where we stand right now.
Mr. Treasurer. So are you having issues? State Auditor Beth Wood again. Are you having issues getting information that you need from North Wilkesboro? Wilkesboro.
No, we are not.
All right, this is Bob with the town of Wilkesboro. I believe we've tried another avenue for our audio. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I apologize for the bump in the road there. We were able to hear Tim's response to the initial questions. We're certainly happy to respond in kind as well. As Tim kind of stated, I believe that he and I and our third party who's also involved in this, we had a meeting scheduled prior to our being placed on this agenda, scheduled for last Thursday. We came out of that all with very clear marching orders. Tim's got a date on the schedule to be up here end of next week. Information's been flowing freely from my office to Malden and Jenkins. I feel like we're all sort of running downhill at this point. As far as the June 30th date, that was a date that I had conveyed to Sharon, I think back in April or early May, and I've been keeping her abreast of our situation by email. Honestly, when I read the letter that came, I was a little surprised that there was the word conflict used in there as far as conflicting reports of what the auditor had to say on our behalf, or what, you know, the word was coming from us directly. Yeah.
Sharon, you want to add anything to that?
Well, I'm glad that y'all met Thursday. I know that the meeting had been postponed, which again led to further concerns on my part that this was not all going to happen in a timely manner. So I'm glad that that meeting took place. I don't disagree that the town has been in touch with me, as has the auditor. But again, I'm getting a slightly different picture from the town than I'm getting from the audit staff. It sounds like you are more on the same page now. And I'm not trying to hold anybody to an exact date, but you're saying July. Are we thinking the first part of July or the last part of July?
This is Tim with Malden and Jenkins. I would think that the first part of July is reasonable, assuming that, you know, the next couple of weeks go well, the on-site visit goes well, and we can continue to have information being sent to us with the town. The town has been very responsive over the last couple of weeks with information to us. So assuming everything kind of keeps going the way that it's going, I don't see any reason why it could not be finished and issued in early July.
Mr. Treasurer. Yes, ma'am. And this is Sharon. This is State Auditor Beth Wood. Sharon, we're talking about 2019's audit. And this is for the town. Any idea when you'll plan to have your 2020 done?
So this is Bob Ernest with the town of Wilkesboro again. My anticipation is, so Malden and Jenkins, this is our first audit working together. We transitioned firms coming out of the 18 audit. I have all of the actuarial reports that would be needed to dive straight from an approved 19 into 2020. You know, we're all of the groundwork's being laid here while we're doing 19. My anticipation would be that 2020 would follow shortly thereafter.
I asked for an approximate date that you plan to have it done.
Well, from my perspective, I have the ability to give a date, but it would sort of be fool's gold to do it without some perspective from my auditor. So I would ask Tim to kind of layer into that as well, because I understand that they've got work schedules and other audit schedules. In my conversation with him, our sort of rough timeline as we were sketching this out would be mid-late August.
Thank you. And then this is Auditor Wood again, the 2021 audit.
So our ultimate goal is on time, obviously. There's some other steps and roads to cross before we get to that. Again, in planning that out last Thursday, I think our ultimate goal being the end of October to hit deadline, but certainly end of November if end of October is not realized.
Thank you.
Any other questions from any board members on Wilkesboro?
And please I'm sorry. State Auditor again, all those dates are going into the minutes.
Oh, I understand. Thank you.
This is the treasurer. I appreciate y'all's attention to this, and just to sort of respond to your surprise by the letter that you received from us. So we're not going to be in the middle of this anymore. We're not going to be having these unilateral conversations with people. One group says one thing and another group says another. And the reason that letter was sent is because I suggested it be sent. With everything that's going on with LGC right now, we do not have the energy to have unilateral conversations. We need to irrigate these things, figure out what's right. There's a big problem out there that's not being disclosed. we gotta get through it, and because we just don't have the resources and the energy to go back and forth where the auditor says one thing and the town says something else. I understand the position that the auditor's in, being called in, for a new client. Appreciate the energy and the focus that you're putting on this. We've also heard that one of the folks under Ken is maybe doing 2 or 1.5 to 2.5 jobs, and that's the city of Wilkesboro's issue about devoting the resources. It's not LTC staff, and every minute that we spend on trying to listen to unilateral conversations is a minute that's probably not leading toward the ultimate answer that we need. And what we ultimately need is not to be talking about Wilkesboro anymore. That's our goal. So, and the longer it goes on, it's no secret to anybody in Wilkesboro, the longer this goes on, the more questions we get about what is really going on. And the fact is, there's nothing may be going on. Nothing negative, so to speak. So just stick to the deadlines. If you want to point a finger toward why that letter was sent out, you can point that finger at me, because I just know how stretched we are, and we've got to move forward. And Wilkesboro's got a lot of, you don't have a land rush going on in Wilkesboro, but you got a lot of activity going on in Wilkesboro right now, and you just don't need this out there. And I think everybody in Wilkesboro would agree with that.
So Treasurer Falwell, this is Ken Nolan, Town Manager. We appreciate your comments. And, you know, I'm the town manager. I have to take blame when we don't hit our goals and timelines as expected. And so that's my responsibility to manage with myself and the city council. We are working our way out of this hole as quickly as we can. And we hope that by October 30th of this year, you're going to find us completely in compliance with all of our audits. To help do so, staff and city council have worked together on a plan to hire up additional financial staffing in town hall. We hope to have that person on board in early July to make for a better, I guess, flow of work in the city hall while we're going forward. And again, we will say this: we certainly have nothing to hide. You're going to find that each audit we send you is going to be it's going to be unqualified opinion, and we're going to move forward with that. Before I wrap up, I do want to give Mayor Inscore an opportunity to make a comment, and then we'll let you all get back to your work ahead of your day. Thank you.
Well, Chairman Falwell, thank you for asking my presence. I will say this, I have all the confidence in the world, as does my town council with these two individuals. I think we have some very gifted individuals holding down our town manager's position and our financial director. And yes, Bob Ernest does wear several hats. He's also the assistant manager, and he's well involved in our HR department, and that we don't have a single person that is responsible for HR. So he juggles a lot of balls, but he does it efficiently. And as human nature is, at times one ball will be dropped. But I don't feel like that we did anything intentionally. As it was just denoted, the town council approved additional funding for additional staff to be hired this year. And I think that what errors that we may have made past tense will not occur future tense.
Thank you, Mayor, for those comments. The reason it's doubly important to me in my role as treasurer is that as announcements are coming around the state of businesses coming or expanding in certain areas of the state, I need to be able to say with confidence that they're on the right path. And that's.
Well, and we certainly want you to be able to say that with confidence. We are blessed that there is a lot of positive activity going on, not just in Wilkesboro, but Wilkes County, but to the issue at hand that addresses Wilkesboro exclusively. We will manage, and my promise to you and your council members is that we will not be having this conversation again.
Thank you very much.
So yeah, I'll turn the meeting over now to Susan McCullen to talk about our two fiscal accountability agreement units, Spring Lake and Scotland Lake.
Wilkesboro and the auditor, thank y'all for joining us. You're welcome to stay on if you like.
Okay, first I'm going to talk about Scotland Neck. We have some folks on the phone from Scotland Neck. Mayor Eddie Braxton, Commissioner James Gunnels, Commissioner James Savage, Commissioner Charles Shields, Commissioner Charles Stute, Commissioner Raymond Watson, and Finance Officer Nancy Dempsey. So we executed a fiscal accountability agreement between the town of Scotland Neck and the staff of the Local Government Commission on February 24th of this year. They were the first one of these agreements, types of agreements that we did. We had a number of concerns. They have absolutely provided the information that they committed to us to provide. So we've had our monthly information, the budget and actual information that we requested in the meetings, the reports that we wanted, but we continue to be concerned about their compliance. They have repeated budget overages in the current fiscal year 2021 that have resulted in a continuing decrease in available general fund cash. They also have a draft of a 2022 budget that doesn't include any significant changes to address their unrealistic revenue and expenditure projections. They're still really living beyond their means. One of our goals, both Scotland Neck and I, when they signed the agreement, they agreed to our goals. The first goal was to hire a full-time finance officer or a third party to handle the monthly bookkeeping. Nancy Dempsey is still currently serving as finance officer and interim manager, and she is a part-time person. That's just not enough leadership for a town with the complexity of 3 utilities that they have. We are very concerned about the financial viability of the town if they don't comply with our agreement.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
You have the floor, Mr. Bass.
So I hear the staff saying that they're concerned that if they don't, that the town of Scotland Neck doesn't comply with the agreement, but if they have a new budget for the new year coming up that doesn't make significant changes, are they already in default of the agreement?
The agreement said that their budget, to answer your question, yes, I do believe that they are. The agreement specifically asked that they develop a budget that complied with the North Carolina general statutes. That requires reasonable revenues and a balanced budget. So it's my opinion that they have not complied with the goals of the agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Does follow up on Mr. Bass's question. Does anybody at the town disagree with what you just said? Does anybody on the call with the town disagree that you haven't followed through on your agreement and that you're living beyond your means?
Nancy Dempsey, I see that you're connected to the call, but you're muted.
Six people on the call from Scotland Neck. Does anyone like to respond to my question?
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Unmuted. Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we do disagree, but we have submitted a budget that is a balanced budget. It's a budget we feel very comfortable with. We have not hired a full-time town manager as of today. We have Mr. Horton from Peyton Horton CPAs. He has been coming in as a third party on a weekly basis, helping us with our budget.
Can I ask you a follow-up?
Sure.
Who was just speaking? Is that the mayor?
This is Katie Braxton, the mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Braxton.
For the record, Commissioner Savage, Commissioner Gunnels, and Commissioner Watson couldn't be here for work conflicts.
Mayor Braxton, this is the treasurer. So you say that you have a budget, but what our staff said is that the budget you have is not much different than the one that you were under last year, which with overspending and overdrafting shows that you're clearly living beyond your means. That was the word from the staffer. Do you disagree with that in terms of the current budget?
I do disagree with that.
May I speak to that, please?
Not a reasonable budget. Okay.
May I speak to that, please?
And Mayor Braxton, I just wanted to say, before we go any further, is that, we're not attempting, we're just attempting to do our jobs, and as I'm sure you are. So if that's all the way we can deal with this, is to get it out in the open. So go ahead, Susan. Susan has the floor.
Mayor Braxton, this is Susan McCullen. I am I want to speak to the town's practices with its budget over the last couple of audited fiscal years. In 2019, the year ended June 30th, 2019, the town spent 144% of your final general fund budget. You overspent your general fund budget by $741,000.
Let's stop and see if he agrees. Do you agree with that, Mayor?
I do, and
All right, thank you. All right, we're gonna give you a chance to respond. Let's let her keep
Okay.
going.
In fiscal year June 30th, 2020, the town spent 106% of your total general fund budget. You overspent your general fund budget by $164,549. My concern is continued budgeting in the manner that you currently budget is not realistic. Those over expenditures have significantly negatively impacted your fund balance available and your cash in your general fund. And you cannot continue to operate under your current manner of operations. And when we talked last time, we talked about the changes that you had made. You had not made a significant or any sort of move to reduce expenditures in your town. And so I think that is not the intent of 159, that your town's budget is unrealistic. And I'm concerned for your town's viability.
Mr. Treasurer, may I ask a couple questions for you?
Mayor, we're gonna let State Auditor Beth Wood ask a couple of questions as you try to think about your response to what Susan's just said. Mayor Wood, Auditor Wood.
So Susan, so the mayor's comment was, we've adopted a balanced budget. That is not what you said.
That's not
You
what I said.
said they're adopting a budget. Nobody's questioning whether it's balanced or not,
Right,
but it appears to be unreasonable budget.
correct.
So are they budgeting unrealistic revenues, or are they budgeting appropriated fund balance?
They, I don't have the budget in front of me right now. That might be a question that a staff person that has specifically reviewed it. Currently, in the current fiscal year, I don't have that number in front of me. I apologize, I don't.
No, that's okay. I was just wondering if they are appropriating fund balance every year, because that is not a great practice.
It's not a good practice.
And while it's not against the law, it's not in compliance, it's still not in the spirit of GS 159. It's all about budgeting what you can cover the cost of.
Correct.
And if they constantly are overspending their budget, I have to think they've done one of two things. They budgeted revenues that they did not recognize, or they're okay with just dipping into the kitty every year with appropriated fund balance.
Well, they have, in reality, because they have a change in fund balance that is more than they budgeted because they overspent their expenditures. They are using their fund balance and their.
And I get that, but to fluff up their revenues, just to say they've
adopted a balanced budget, knowing that those revenues will never come to fruition, is directly not in compliance with GS 159. So again, I'm interested in, and are they intentionally breaking the law or just?
My thought is that they don't have the resources or the time that they need to budget well, and that they don't have the resources or time they need to manage that budget when they adopt it. And that is why I'm so concerned that they do work to hire a finance person. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to bring them to the commission to talk to y'all today. They may be thinking that they're following the letter of the law, but they are not following the intent of the law, which is sound budgeting that is with reasonable revenue estimates and not spending any money unless you have it budgeted.
Well, and again, I Father Wood again, I'm going back to the point. They got these expenses that they want to have, and then they're fluffing up the revenues just to say they've adopted a balanced budget. That is more serious than just not knowing how to budget.
I did confirm with staff that it's been a combination of issues, overspending on the expenditure side and overestimating revenues on the revenue side. It's been a mix.
So it's both.
And I'm sorry, this is Sharon speaking. It's both. They did not appropriate any fund balance in the 2022 budget that's been proposed. But again, we feel like the revenues are probably
overestimated.
Yes.
So does the new budget cut anything?
We cut most of the recreation department out of the new budget.
Correct, the new budget. Are there any cuts in the new budget?
What else did we do?
No, it is my understanding there are no expenditure cuts in the new budget, or if there are, they are insignificant.
This is Commissioner Harris. I have a question.
We cut a public works position out, and we also cut most of our recreation budget out. We won't have a recreation director this year. A lot of those large purchases, we purchased a fire truck and paid for it. We had to purchase a generator for our waste treatment plant. That was $250,000. Fire truck was $300,000. Then by taking over our street department back, we had little or no equipment, so we had to purchase some equipment and one new truck. So that's where most of that $741,000 came from. Our waste treatment plant, we felt like we would save money in the long run by running it ourselves, and that has worked out good so far. But it just hadn't had a chance to catch up what we've spent. And we have a grant that's been approved for $2 million to refurbish the whole plant. But our plant was in horrible condition of running, and we had to spend some money on pumps that weren't working properly, and we just had a mess at the waste treatment plant.
Mayor, thank you for that. I'm sure we'll be asking you to respond a little bit more, but Commissioner Harris has a question.
This is for the town. The town, the size of Scotland Neck, what is the reason that you have not always hired a full-time finance person?
We have had full-time finance people. The town went a number of years with just Ms. Dempsey as the town clerk and the finance person. And we hired a gentleman. When was Charles hired? And Mr. Basie was hired a couple of years ago, and he worked for us for a short time during, I think it was from 2019 to sometime in 2020. But since we had lost our we have such a hard time keeping a town administrator in our community because we're a senior community and it doesn't offer a lot for young people. We have tried to find somebody retired that would want to do this, but it's hard to find that professional person that wants to come to Scotland Neck. That's a very shallow pool for us. If you get somebody right out of college, then they're good for a year or so, and then they're gone.
I understand. I do. I appreciate your situation.
Mr. Treasurer, I have another question. So so this agreement was to keep us from stepping in and taking over?
Correct. Yeah.
And they have not followed up with, they haven't done well on they haven't met the agreement. So the next step is to go in and take them over? Yes or no? So we did this agreement.
Yeah.
So that the LGC wouldn't have to take them over, but they didn't abide by the agreement. And so the next step is to take them over and run their town for them and help them establish a budget that they can stay in alignment with. Yes?
Sharon?
Well, this is Sharon speaking. Technically, the next step is to issue a notice of warning.
Yeah.
We have to go through that process.
I understand that, but that's just a formality to get to where we're going to end up. And that is taking them over and running them with the citizens of that area so they won't keep being in financial trouble and eating up their fund balance.
Those are our only options
Yes.
if
Okay.
this agreement does not work.
Okay. Well, it doesn't sound like it's working. So I guess.
Good.
Ask-
Ms. Dempsey would like to make a statement, please.
Give me a minute, I'm not done yet. Thank you. This is state auditor. So, Mr. Treasurer, I guess, what I'm asking is to hear what Scotland Neck's going to do to get in alignment with their agreement with the local government commission, or I don't know anything else to do except move forward with where we were headed.
You've heard the auditor. Did you want to respond?
Ms. Dempsey.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
We were asking, I think at our last meeting that we had, if we could retain Mr. Horton's help until the end of this fiscal year, so that we would not have to pay a full-time financial person. And also, we would like you to consider with the budget that we have proposed, that you continue to monitor us for at least the first quarter of next year and see what things look like. Because we feel pretty good that we won't have the expenses that we had in the past 2 years, to have to take care of. And we don't have any of those obligations that we found ourselves in over the last 2 years. Currently, we're scheduled to do our audit, our 21 audit, August the 1st, or the first week in August.
Mayor, Wood has the floor.
So, Ms. Dempsey, Auditor Wood, I'm concerned. I hear expenditures last year that I cannot imagine that you went into your budget without knowing you needed a fire truck and all the other expenses that you had. So you're telling me you don't feel like you're going to have these expenses in 2022. I have no assurances that you know what you need. You missed on the big expenditures that cost you the $742,000. If you missed on those for 2021, I have no assurances that you got 2022 right either.
How much debt is there, if anybody knows, and is there a debt payment that is coming due soon?
We're making the last of our debt payments today. It's a drafted amount for sewer funds that we had probably 40 years ago.
What is the amount of that payment?
I think it's $41,000 that we're making to actually, it's drafted out today. And then we have no more debt next fiscal year.
you're referring to water and sewer debt, Nancy?
It was
Yes,
Josh.
ma'am.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, there's no general fund, debt that I'm seeing, so.
Because that's my question is, what is they're asking for more time, and I hear the auditor's concerns too, but what is the risk if we give them more time? And it sounds like there is not some huge amount of debt, that it would be hugely risky either.
Mr. Treasurer? Josh, what she said was, let us adopt this debt, this budget, and monitor us on the first quarter and see what we look like. That's what got said. So what they wanted to step out there and adopt this budget and then start spending against this budget and then look at them in the first quarter and see what they look like. Are they on target or not on target? And no.
You know what I'm inclined to do? Tell me what you think about this, Mayor Braxton. Let's do an interim budget for you. And let's do an interim budget for you. Let's don't do a budget for 2022 yet.
How many months would you like that budget, that interim budget?
No more than 2 months.
This is Sharon. I would recommend 2 months. You can always cut it off sooner if you get a final budget developed.
But let's, my thought is that there needs to be some real attention given to changes in the Scotland Neck budget. I'm afraid that you're a community that's been living beyond your means for several years, and you need to we need to develop a plan that will show you how you can begin to restore yourself to fiscal viability. But you're not there with your 2022 budget, and I do not want to. I'm reluctant to pull that trigger without more expenditure reductions there.
Mayor, this is State Treasurer, and as you can imagine, with 1,300 entities that report to us and different levels of experience coming from our LGC board members and staff, we've seen it all, we've heard it all, we've seen all kinds of things. And I don't want my comments to sound rude, but we typically feel intuitively as LGC members, when we feel like there's an agreement, at least a joint agreement, that there's a problem. I'm not getting that feeling. And that's what concerns me. We have folks come in here all the time and say, we got a problem. We need your help. We're gonna take the courageous steps to address these things. So don't accept my comments as being rude or I'm just being accurate about where my intuition is right now. That our staff thinks there's a big problem here. And I don't get the feeling like the city guy feels like there's a big problem. And I'd love for you to correct me on that intuition if you don't mind.
Well, I live here. I've been here for 67 years. We felt like I have felt like for some time, if we could take back over our water and sewer plant and our street departments, that we could save some money. And through hiring some people for other positions, we found out that they were licensed, that we could take over our water and sewer department. And that's what we did in February of last year. And once we took it over, we realized there were more problems out there than what we anticipated. And I mean, we had to make a choice of putting in some new pumps or continuing having raw sewage dumped in the canal that flows out to Fishing Creek. And we fixed these problems especially until we can get our, plant refurbished. And we had to buy some equipment for our street departments that we didn't have. We had to buy one new truck. We refurbished one, got it working to where we were. And the generator, we're paying $25,000 a month to rent a generator for the waste treatment plant. And we had to buy one for $250,000. And we bought the fire truck, and we're hoping, once we get our new audit in, that we'll be able to refinance and put that money back in our treasurer, because the fire department is making payments to us on that at this time. So I still feel very comfortable with the budget that we have. You know, we're providing the services for our community that we've been obligated to provide. And we're going to continue, Mr. Horton is going to continue to help Ms. Dempsey until we can find a full-time person, and hopefully that right person will come our way, just like the waste treatment plant operator came our way. So, you know, but I do feel comfortable, and I know you guys have a lot of experience, but you know, I live here and I know what's going on, and I feel comfortable with our revenues for next year. One of our biggest revenue sources is sales tax, and unless COVID kicks back in, I feel like our sales tax is going to be up tremendously this coming year. But you know, we'll be glad to do a 2-month budget if that's what you guys want us to do.
I just have a question as to timelines on that, because if they did a 2-month interim budget, that would put us in August, right? We'd be looking at that in the August meeting.
Yeah.
But at the same time, concurrently, could we also be looking at bringing them under the LGC control? So at the August meeting, we could see the interim budget, see how they're doing, but also have the option of voting. Would it be possible to do both at the same time?
Well, you'd have to, we'd be back at where we are today. We'd be sending a letter.
But I'm saying we would go ahead and next month, Sharon, what was the word you used? What's the first step? I forget the wording.
A notice of warning.
We could issue the notice of warning in July. And then in August, we could vote potentially for takeover, to take over their finances and put them under the authority of the LGC. Or that would also give us the 2 months of the interim budget at that point that we could see how they're doing. And it would allow us to make a decision in August.
This is Sharon. My hope would be that during that 2 months, we could work with the town to develop a more realistic budget.
And if that happened, we wouldn't have to make the vote in August.
Yes, that would be our goal, and our whole purpose for doing the interim budget is to give us a little more time. Because once, as you know, once they set the tax rate in the final budget, that's it. You can't go back and change it.
2 months would be September, so that gives them 2 full months. So we would be voting in September.
But this is the treasurer. I mean, obviously, we don't mind working with people, but I just, once again, intuitively, just feel like that Scotland Neck doesn't think there's a problem, we do. So, when you got two parties, one who doesn't think there's a problem, and it's like a marriage almost. One don't think there's a problem, and one that think there is a problem is working together. I'm not sure where that.
I mean, can I ask just 2 quick questions, sir? This is Scott.
Cindy, I've got to step away for a moment.
This is Scott. Yes or no, do you anticipate that you would have to use any of your reserve fund this coming year? As it stands? All right. And what is your tax rate?
78.5 cents.
I know that's high. How long has it been since you raised that rate?
2 years ago, and 1 cent only produces about $8,000.
Yeah, Yeah, I understand, sir. You're in a,
We raised our, flat charges on our water and sewer charges plus some charges on the per gallon, because that, and we raised our garbage collection rates. What else did we raise, man? That's all. That generated the most income to revenue for the town.
was that effective in this year's budget that you plan to adopt, or was that last year?
No, it came in effect for this current month, so we'll have an extra month's of revenue in this year that we had budgeted for from those rate increases.
Well, that's a step in the right direction. And I know that's painful to your population. I understand.
It is. We're a tier 1 town, a tier 1 county.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, this is Ronald Penny. Do you all, you're the Electric City?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Now, do you make any transfers from your utility fund to the general fund?
Yes, sir. We make less than what we appropriated, we can make.
All right, but you anticipate in your budget transferring money from the utility fund to the general fund?
Yes, sir.
Mayor, this is the treasurer, what's your reserve balance as a percentage?
It was the fund balance available as a percentage of expenditures was 21.56%. And in 2020, at the end of 2020, at the end of 2018, it was 62.26%. So their cash has taken a real nosedive in the last 3 years.
Mr. Treasurer?
Yes, ma'am.
Auditor Wood here. I am amazed that you're having to send money from the utilities fund to the general fund because you can't cover your expenses in the general fund, and you don't think there's a problem in needing a real hard look at your expenditures. That, I mean, that tells a story right there that you're having to transfer money from your utility to general fund. And I think that there needs to be a hard, in-depth look at what you think you need versus what you really need. And I just don't hear I think that needs to happen. I'm in favor of the 2 interim budget. And then do we anticipate that LGC is going to help them look into their budget, or is this back on them to look at their own budget? What?
I think we'll provide them some assistance. We already are working with them monthly per our agreement. I think we'll be working on what the budget beginning in September will look like.
So Water to Wood, was that a motion?
I'm not sure if she finished it though. You want that notice sent out anyway?
I'm not sure it's going to be a motion. What it's going to be as a directive is that here's where we are, that they probably need to adopt an interim budget. They can do it or not do it. And they can make a real in-depth look at what they got going on in their town, given the revenue that they have. And if they don't, the LGC will step in and do it for them down the road. So it's not a motion. It's just, I'm sort of saying where we're headed.
I agree with that. And the other thing, I talk about expenditures, but I would look at the revenue side too. The mayor pointed out you don't get much from raising your tax rate. So I agree his other funds bring more revenue, but I look at it, are they budgeting realistically? Do they need more revenue? Is it going to work? But anyway, I agree with the direction y'all are saying.
Sure. So I talked with a town that is having some similar issues, and they were talking about their budget, what a great job they had done, and they had all their department heads in front of them, and everybody talked about but when I got down to the nitty gritty, what I found out is all the department heads stepped up and said, I want last year's budget plus. And I said, well, look at your police department. And I said, do you know how many man hours you have? Do you know how many man hours are being worked? And does this all make sense? And they all looked at me like a deer in headlights. So the in-depth, these are the positions we've got. This is the man hours we have, and this is the work that needs to be done. Does it equal? And until you do that, you don't know if your budget's any good or not. And that's an in-depth look. But again, so this is where I think Scotland Neck needs to go, and that is adopt an interim budget with the help of the LGC, come up with a more realistic budget for 2022. And they can do it or not do it. If not, the LGC can go in and take them over 2 months down the road. I mean, that's where I am.
Scotland Neck, do you have any closing comments about what you just said? And in case you're not too experienced, I would take a directive from the state auditor much more seriously than I would a motion.
Well, we will be glad to take any assistance that's available to us, but, because we feel like we are offering our services to our citizens that they're expecting. We have police coverage 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But we'll be willing to accept whatever assistance you want to provide for us for this budget.
Susan, anything else?
No.
And I just want to repeat, this is Treasurer again. We don't mind assisting people who feel like they need or want to be assisted. And I'm not getting that feeling. So we'll just, we're going to take the auditor's directive as well as the great suggestions from other board members, and we'll be staying tuned. But I think Susan and the LGC and the members of the LGC have given you some really simple, not always easy, but simple, clear direction today. And I hope that you'll take it and move forward.
Cindy, I'm back. Secretary Marshall.
And Mr. Treasurer,
Yeah.
I just want to ask though, we'll have an update next month also.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
okay.
Next is Spring Lake.
All right.
Thank you, Mayor and others for joining us from Scotland Neck.
Thank you.
The other financial accountability or fiscal accountability agreement we have is with Spring Lake. And Spring Lake has done very well with this agreement. They have strong leadership in an interim town manager and in a interim financial officer. They've continued to submit documentation and records as we requested for the agreement. They've submitted a draft budget that's realistic in revenues and expenditures. They have involved the department heads. They've involved the commissioners and had some really tough conversations with them. And so there are going to be expenditures that begin to make significant cuts that for fiscal year 2022 in Spring Lake that I think will begin to spin down the path. It's a multi-year process, but it will begin to get them towards financial health.
This is Sharon. I just want to kind of reiterate what Susan said about Spring Lake. I listened in on some of their budget meetings, and their new leadership laid it out for the board. You know, and they started on the revenue side. Here's how much revenue we think we're going to have. Tell us how you want to spend it. And they laid out the different options on position cuts, program cuts. You know, they kind of segregated what they had to do, and then laid out the rest of it as to how they chose to spend the rest of their money. And they had some very difficult decisions to make. I'm talking furloughs, cutting positions, cutting programs, that they knew that they had to do that in order to get their town back on the right track. And they did a superb job, I thought, of dealing with the board. I don't know what the board's going to end up adopting because they haven't adopted the budget yet. The staff just did a fantastic job.
Mr. Treasurer?
Yes, ma'am.
So what is the, sort of the demeanor, that's what I'm looking for, of the commissioners, of the aldermen?
There is some reluctance, of course, among the elected officials to make those deep cuts. But I think that they've heard it enough times now, and Susan, feel free to disagree with me. I think they've heard it enough times now there that they know that that's the reality that they're dealing with.
Alder Wood again. So this is, so what if you get to that point and it's politics and it's not the best decisions for the town? What's the recourse? Because I know there's some politics at play, and it's just sheer politics, has nothing to do with what's best for the town.
I mean, obviously, unless we are in a position to tell them, no, you can't do that, we can't really stop them.
Help me, remind me of Spring Lake, this is another agreement?
Yes.
And so we could step in and take them over?
I mean, we could.
Okay, all right.
And they understand that that's the where they're at.
Okay.
I think there is always politics, but I do believe that they have they have worked well with this interim manager. Well, she's worked well with them. That's the way to say it.
And
she's worked well with them.
And I would tell you that she's laid out beautifully.
Yes.
What the needs are for that town. But there are those that I think would like to have it run the way it used to be run. And so, and I don't know if it's majority or not majority, how this is going to go. So I just want to know what the repercussions are if they start to head in a direction that's strictly politics and not what's best. I mean, this town is just about to go bankrupt. And it just cannot slip at all. It's got to stay on this track. And she is phenomenal at what she's doing and how she's laid things out. And it does not need for politics to step in because they don't like what she's telling them they need to do.
Well, if they don't like what we would tell them the same thing she is.
Well, I'm thinking they get rid of her, adopt a budget that's outrageous, and they think things are back to normal. Just making sure everybody understands they're not going to be back to normal. If not her, then y'all, us.
This is Sharon again. We've reiterated that message to them multiple times.
Okay.
Whether or not they've heard it, to your
Yeah.
point, auditor, is
Yeah.
another story.
Okay. All right.
Anything else on Spring Lake? But this has been a little bit like a country music song the last 3 minutes. So you start out really good about you were satisfied, happy, or figuring out what's right, getting it right, and trying to keep it right.
Right.
Then we went to a different verse over here, and then another different verse over here. So which?
If they continue the course they're on now with the budget, the last budget that we were working with them, then we are satisfied with their direction. And they've got a budget there that would begin to restore them. If they don't go that way, if they let the politics get the best of them and choose to not do what Samantha had, the interim manager, and I'm not even going to say her name.
I know.
Has suggested that they do. If they don't do what she has presented them with, then I think it is inevitable that we'll be doing a 181C action for them. I don't know any other way to do
And
it.
Mr. Treasurer, I would say Susan said it exactly right. They have awesome leadership and that town manager, and she has got her thumb on the pulse of what it's going to take to fix that place. The letdown will be commissioners or aldermen that don't want this budget. And they want things back like they used to be when they ran the place like they wanted to, and nobody told them, no, you can't spend this, and no, you can't do that.
And, so what you're saying is they're priced for perfection. I mean, the trajectory they're on is everything to line up with your parks.
Well, and they're on the right track, but it can all be thrown under the bus if the aldermen don't vote on the budget she's laid out for them.
I know we probably took these in alphabetical order, but we probably should start with next time if we have two of these together like this, probably start with the one that we feel like is trying to figure out what's right, get it right, and keep it right. So the other ones who I just released from the phone call could have heard
Yeah,
that.
I heard it. It would have been good for them to heard it. Yeah.
Just to prove that we are in session. We can't be satisfied.
Yes.
I mean, we're not in session. Yeah, okay. Any questions from any board members on Spring Lake? And who's my friend, Sam Watts, who's the representative from there?
Michael Ray.
Not Scotland Neck, Spring Lake, Cumberland County.
Garland Pierce.
I served with for years.
Billy Richardson.
Clark.
Maybe he's in the Lucas
Oh, yeah, Marvin Lucas.
Marvin, yeah.
That's right, Marvin's
I talked to Marvin the other day, who I dearly miss in the general from that area or close by. So anyway, just to make a point to the members that we are not just involving county commissioners, legal municipalities, school of government and others, but also local delegations on many of these issues and topics. So Susan, would you like to turn the meeting back over to Sharon?
Yes, gladly.
All right, so this is Sharon, and we're going to start on the unit letter applications. The first one up is the City of Brevard. They have two loans. Both of them are SRF loans from the state. They are both for water projects, for pipe replacement, valve replacement, fire hydrant replacement, and demolition and replacement of a water storage tank. One loan is $272,000, the other one is $714,500. Again, they're both SRFs, and interest rate not to exceed 4%, and a 20-year term. They have a unit letter, which I will turn it back over to Susan to go over.
So the town of Brevard, we sent them a letter in February for two issues. Their fund balance available for appropriation was less than comparable units. Their percentage was 29% at 2020, and the percentage for their unit was 74%. So we would have wanted it to be at about 36 or something like that. Then we also noted potential weaknesses in the water support fund. They had a quick ratio that was less than 1. They did a really good response. They had a very thorough response that showed us, they talked about what they had done to address the cash flow with their and improve their fund balance available. They have moved cash or tax collection that was being done by the county back into the city, and they had really improved the cash flow with this change. And normally that doesn't work, but in their case, it has worked well. In February, at the end of February of this year, they were at 99.8% of their annually budgeted amounts. They've really done well with their general fund. They also have,
Susan, let me interrupt you a minute. Was anybody on the phone from Spring Lake?
Spring Lake? No, no one was on the phone.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
And from Brevard, I'm glad you reminded me. The city manager, Jim Fatlin, and Assistant Finance Director, Tom Whitlock. Are y'all on the phone?
We're here. Can you hear us?
We can. Thank you. You did a
Good
great
afternoon.
You did a very good response to us.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome. They also talked in their response about water and sewer. They've consistently improved increases, and they gave us a schedule or some verbiage that went back to fiscal year 14 of how they have consistently increased their rates, and say that they do intend to do a rate increase in fiscal year 2022. Overall, it was a very satisfactory response.
Is there any procedural reason why we can't vote on these together?
All three of them?
No, the Brevard.
Oh, the two Brevard.
You want us to separate the towns, though, right? Okay.
That would be perfect.
All right. Anything else from staff? So you're recommending approval?
Yes.
Folks in Brevard, sounds like you've earned those accolades, so thank you. Thank you for joining us today. This is Treasurer Falwell. I'll accept a motion to accept staff's recommendation to approve the two revolving loans for the city of Brevard.
So moved.
Mayor Pageant. Second,
Second, Marshall.
and Secretary Marshall. Any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk will call the roll.
Paget, Marshall, and Auditor Wood.
Aye.
Thank you. Secretary Penny.
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Bass.
Aye.
Mr. Munn.
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck.
Aye.
Treasurer Falwell.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Now, Orange County.
Right, this is Sharon again. The next item is $28 million in limited obligation bonds for Orange County. Partially tax exempt, partially taxable. These are for multiple projects and some refunding. We've got a variety of capital improvements, refunding of the 2014 installment financing and a 2014 state revolving fund, and also the callable maturities of a Series 2012 limited obligation bond. They'll have net present value savings of approximately $374,000 or 4.55%. No tax increase is expected, or rather is required for this, but the county is expected to recommend a 3-cent tax increase in the 2022 budget.
Wow.
It was a variety of different terms, no longer than 20 years on the debt. They also received a unit letter, so I'll turn it back over to Susan for that.
Okay. We sent a unit letter to Orange County in April. There were some issues raised. They had some over expenditures in their general fund that were related to debt service payments. They also had some non-major funds that were not budgeted. And then they had some gaps in check sequences. It was an internal control issue. The manually entered check numbers were inconsistent. So they responded on May 27th to us. The non-major funds that don't have any material financial activity will be closed. And they're going to start reviewing non-major funds more routinely and make sure that they catch those and review those and do the budget amendments as appropriate for those. Debt service, they changed how they account for that and will begin budgeting it going forward as they should. And then the check sequences that were out of gas. That was because of a business process change due to COVID. They began doing a large number of increases in electronic fund transfers as opposed to manual checks. And there was some business process issues that they have now resolved, and we were satisfied with the response.
Any questions from the board members? Once again, Sharon and Susan, going back to intuition, it just seems like with the land rush that's going on, that Orange County having increased property taxes 3 cents and these other issues, it feels like they should be minting money. What is the internal controls, or what is?
I'll speak to the tax increase, and Tim, feel free to add to. Is the tax increase, I don't think has anything to do with the debt. I don't really know why they want a 3 cent tax increase, but it was not necessary to repay this debt. So Gary Donaldson, the finance officer, is on the phone. He can maybe provide that question.
Yes, ma'am. So back in 2016, the voters approved a referendum for school bonds, and we use a debt model, and that debt model goes out 10 years. The 3 cent tax increase is to support the debt service that the voters voted on. So it is going towards meeting our debt service requirement.
And when's the last time you did a reval?
The reval is effective for, was done in January 2021. So what we did is we rolled back to the revenue neutral rate in our debt model, and then looked at the increase to support the debt service. And that is the reason for the 3 cent tax increase. Over the course of the past 2 years, debt service has increased 10 million. So it's tax increases to support that debt service, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding Orange County? Since we're in a public meeting, if y'all expressed everything you want to express about Orange County?
Yes, I believe so, unless Susan has any additional comments.
I mean, I'll vote on none of that. Oh, okay.
All right. Do you hear a motion to accept staff's recommendation to approve Orange County?
Baldwin Harris, so moved.
Second, Josh Bass.
Thank you, Josh. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Auditor Wood?
Aye.
Secretary Marshall?
Aye.
Secretary Penny?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Munn?
Aye.
Mr. Paget?
Aye.
Kodak?
Aye.
Treasurer Falwell?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Town of Sharpsburg.
Right, the last unit letter item is the town of Sharpsburg. I want to borrow about $950,000 to improve manholes and address some of their inflow and infiltration issues. This should reduce overall their cost of treatment for their sewer system. This is an SRF loan with a 20-year term and an interest rate not to exceed 4%. And the town did get unit letter, and I will turn that back over to Susan.
Okay, for the town of Sharpsburg, we have Robert Williams, the mayor, on the phone, David Pride, the mayor pro tem, B.B. Cox, the town administrator, Tracy Sullivan, the town clerk, and then Beverly Davis, a commissioner. And we sent the town a letter in March of 2021 on 3 issues. The audited financial statements were late. We did not receive them until March 5th. Then there were some financial concerns with the water and sewer fund. It was the cash flow from operations was negative, meaning they didn't have enough money to cover, they didn't get enough, collect enough cash to cover their operations in that fund. And then there were significant journal entries that the auditor had to do at year end to adjust the books so that subsidiaries and account balances would be reconciled. And we got a response in April, but we asked them for a revised response because we wanted a little bit more detail. So what we got on May 25th was the town, concerning the audit, the town has drafted and will submit an RFP for a new firm that will conduct the upcoming audit. They're looking at getting a larger firm that can dedicate more sufficient time to the staff and produce the audit. They've also noted timelines that the firm will have to agree to. And they have retained current finance staff for over 5 years, which has aided in the audit being closer to a timely submission. Regarding the adjusting entries, they will be researching CPA firms or third-party contractors that can help their finance staff reconcile those subsidiary ledgers. And concerning the water and sewer, they recognize that they have not had a rate study done like they needed to, and so they will be working with Rural Water to obtain a rate study as soon as possible. So we were satisfied with their response.
Town of Sharpsburg, this is Treasurer Falwell. Thank you all for joining us. Do we have any questions from the staff? I mean, from the members?
No, sir.
No, sir.
I do. So I always am leery of an entity that promises to raise rates or says they're going to raise rates, and then we leave alone 20 years and then they don't. So I just have a problem with that. The water and sewer fund is in how bad a shape? Negative cash flow, is that what you said?
Mm-hmm. Negative cash flow from operations. Yes.
No, I have a problem with it. I guess I would like to see the staff get the arms around a rate increase of some sort before bringing a recommendation to me, because I'm not comfortable with somebody saying we're going to raise rates and then they just don't. I'm just not comfortable with that.
Can I reply to that?
Yes.
This is Commissioner Davis, and we do know as commissioners that this is something that is imperative that we do. Do we like to do it? No, because one of the biggest complaints is about our water and sewer amounts. They're astronomical. And one of the reasons it is because of the water drainage sending back so much more to the city of Rocky Mount than what we get. And so by doing the sewer infrastructure improvements, that will definitely help in lowering that rate. But we do know that this is something that we have to bite the bullet, and we will be increasing our rates. We have to. And the commissioners do know that, as well as the mayor, town manager, all of us. We know that that has to happen.
So you're raising the rates in your budget for 2022?
This is Stevie Cox, the Sharpsburg Town Administrator. In my budget statement, let me go back 1 year. In the budget that we're currently operating out of, one of the things that was listed in our capital improvements plan was addressing some of our infrastructure needs. And we got approved for access management plan grant for both water and sewer in this current budget year, which is one of the things that we'll do as a survey of that. But we're also moving towards addressing those greater needs as we go forward. In my budget statement that I have, the preliminary budget statement that I gave the council, as well as the official budget statement that they'll read tonight, I have mentioned that there is a need for us to raise our water and sewer rates as well as our property tax rates, both of which have not been raised or increased over the last 10 years. So council is aware, and it is my intent to make sure that those things are addressed going forward, so that we can be in a better or more sound financial position going forward.
So you've raised your utility rates in the budget for 2022.
I do not.
You did not.
This is Sharon. If I'm reading this response correctly, and folks from Sharpsburg, correct me, that they are in the process of obtaining a rate study.
Yes.
And then rates
Yes.
can be anytime during the year. They don't have to be part of the budget process. So is what you're saying that once you get the rate study, then you'll take that into consideration, what kind of rate increase you'll implement?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes.
Again, it's all promises. What they will do. Okay.
Any other questions? Sharpsburg's in 3 different counties.
Yes.
That's correct. And on Wilson, Edgecombe County side they're below poverty rate within the national average. And that's the reason why I think in the past years we haven't tried to put more on them than they can bear. But in order for the town to survive, I guess you listen to our town administrator and Commissioner Davis. We have to do it in order to sustain the town of Sharpsburg. But we're not trying to hurt them that hard, but we're going to have to do something.
Mr. Treasurer, well, the other side of it is, I assume you've looked at all your expenses in detail to ensure that there's no cuts you need to make.
Exactly.
Okay.
Do you think Sharpsburg is a viable entity going forward?
Yeah.
I believe we are, and I know that when we get this study back, without a shadow of a doubt, that we will be raising it to what the recommendation is, so that we can be sustainable.
Thank you. Any further comments? Do I hear a motion to accept staff's recommendation on Sharpsburg?
So moved.
Mayor Paget,
Yes.
Motion. Second.
I'll make the second. Josh Bass.
Thank you, Josh. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Auditor Wood,
No.
Secretary Marshall,
Aye.
Secretary Penny,
Aye.
Ms. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Munn,
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck,
Aye.
Treasurer Falwell,
Aye.
8-1.
Thank you. Regarding our consent agenda, does any member have a desire to have anything pulled off separately? Just take us all the way through miscellaneous items. or not?
Through Fayetteville Public Works Commission.
And starting with Beaufort County.
Mr. Chair, can I note there's a correction and typo for Sanford? There's two amounts on their item. The higher amount is the correct one. It's $4,324,000.
All right. Does anybody desire to have anything pulled off? If not, do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion approved, Ed Mon.
Thank you, Mr. Mon.
Second, State Auditor.
Second by State Auditor. Any further discussion? I just want to say, obviously, there's some small amounts on here, but there are some huge amounts on here. Some of our major cities, and as I go around the state and look at some of these reserve balances, obviously, we know that some of our major cities are thriving very strongly these days, but their fund balance as a percentage is sometimes very shocking when you look at it for the urban cities and the urban counties. So just want to always keep that in mind. So a motion is second being made. No further discussion. Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Secretary Marshall,
Aye.
Secretary Penny,
Aye.
Ms. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Bass,
Aye.
Mayor Paget,
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck,
Aye.
Treasurer Falwell.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Where are we now? Non-action items,
Correct.
but not to be voted on, right?
Correct.
Staff has the floor to discuss City of King, Town of Davidson, and Halifax County.
We have 3 non-action items for the City of King, Town of Davidson, Halifax County. All 3 of these are rate modifications on financing agreements with the amounts noted there. And again, these are non-action items, so no action by the commission is necessary.
We're now up to our student updates, and staff has the floor.
All right, gonna do the unit updates. These are for units that we have assumed financial control of. The first one is the town of Eureka. Oh, sorry, Cliffside Sanitary District is the first one that I want to do, and you have an update in your packet. Cliffside, the accounts payable is current. There are several upcoming repairs, one of which specifically is significant. We're estimating $128,000. Several other smaller repairs that are in process. We're working to get an updated quote or additional quotes on that one to see if they agree. But we know it's going to be expensive with some of the restoration that needs to be done. We've also requested a $50,000 emergency operating grant from the Bible Utility Reserve. And then the deficit monthly continues to be $3,000 to $6,000. The emergency operating grant that we requested is in addition to $100,000 that we received from DEQ. The grant agreement for $400,000 to do a study to begin to figure out next steps for Eureka is in the works. Contract has been finalized. We don't know if they're going to be getting American Rescue Plan funds at this time. We have we have developed a 2022 budget message that I emailed to you this morning. We also have a ordinance effective for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022. That budget is estimating revenues of $194,486. 108 of that is coming from sewer fees that are being billed by Broad River Water Association. 79,000 of that is VU operating grant money. So you're just receiving this budget for information today, and you'll be voting on it later in the month after public hearings that happen next week and the week after. The next one that I have is Kingstown. The staff of Kingstown, or LGC staff, worked with town officials and isothermal to develop a budget message for 2022 that we'll talk about in a moment. We have delivered records to the auditor, which she expects that we will have a 2019 audit for Kingstown by the end of June. And they have not started 2020 field work yet. The field work had all been delayed. There is a budget amendment that I will need you to vote on in a moment. The repair that I will be asking you to vote on will be funded with viable utility reserve funds. We are continuing to negotiate with Shelby regarding outstanding sewer amounts payable by the town of Kingstown. We are making progress with that and anticipate a resolution soon. The 2022 budget that you have is attached. The proposed budget provides for extended law enforcement services, provides sufficient funding for all of the other existing services. There's no municipal tax increase, and it's a conservative budget overall. And again, you have a copy of that for your information. The town has done the paperwork. We did the paperwork that we needed to do so that the town could receive ARPA funds. And Sharon is going to present a resolution for acceptance of these funds in a few minutes for several of the towns that we have assumed control of. Questions about Kingstown?
I have just a question in general, if I may, on since we're going to be voting on budgets for several towns in the upcoming weeks, do any of the town governments that we have control of in their budgets, or any of their elected officials being paid or compensated in anything other than just a minimal way?
Oh, several of them do compensate, but the amounts are minimal.
Okay.
Yeah, there's large amounts being paid out.
When you say minimal, define minimal.
Like 125 a month or something
Okay.
like that. Yeah.
I'm fine with that. Okay, thank you.
So what did we decide? Do we want to vote on each one of these amendments? So do we want to vote on the Kingstown now?
This is Cindy.
We'll do them all together.
It's the decision of the.
Oh, to do them all together. Okay, all right, I'll hold
The
them.
faster you get through them, the more we can remember them.
Okay. Okay. All right, Town of Robertsonville. Robertsonville, y'all had passed a resolution and we executed an agreement for Martin County to collect the town of Robertsonville taxes beginning July 1. We also have an ordinance for a CDBG grant project for Robertsonville, as well as 4 budget amendments for 2021 that I'm going to ask you to vote on in a minute. And when we get ready to vote on those, I will talk about them. There. The town of Robertsonville's budget, the property tax rate remains unchanged. The governing board in Robertsonville, actually, their expenses, their payroll and related expenses were reduced by 25% for a projected savings of $6,000. The Parks and Rec, there is no money budgeted for Parks and Recreation in the town of Robertsonville's proposed budget, other than just some park-related expenditures, no salaries. The library budget has been reduced to be a $5,000 donation for BHM Library. The town had been including salary and benefits for full-time staff for the library. But beginning with 2022, the town will just provide $5,000 donation to the library as a whole. It's a regional library, and so they don't, it's not a town library. Every full-time employee that participates in the health plan has got those costs included. They've made contributions as they required for elders and those sorts of things. And it does not include any staff raises or any Christmas bonuses. And I'll table the any questions about Robertsonville? Okay, then I'm moving on to Pikeville.
Before we go on, can I ask a question about Robertsonville?
Okay.
Explain to me that East Carolina Antiques and Collectibles, I must have missed something on that.
Explain what?
That's the name of a grant?
A CDBG. It's a block grant. Community Development Block Grant is federal money. And it's a ordinance that is a project that we will be voting on the ordinance in a few minutes.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Sorry. Any other questions?
Other questions? Okay, hearing none. Now to Pikeville.
Okay, the town of Pikeville. The town's bank accounts are under our control. We have the accounts have been closed, and the funds. There were 3 additional bank accounts that we found at BB&T that each had balances of $1,000. We closed those accounts, and the funds were transferred to the town's Southern Bank general operating account on May 21st. So all of the town's cash is now at Southern Bank under the LGC control. We had some wonderful help from the North Carolina League of Municipalities staff and the town's third-party bookkeeper that worked to help us develop the budget ordinance and the budget message. Just like with the others, there's going to be a public hearing, and we'll talk about their budget in a moment. We executed a contract with the town's long-standing third-party bookkeeper, Anthony and Tab. There's a significant detailed scope of services in the contract to hold the firm accountable in a way they have not been in the past. We're also working with a contract proposal from a firm called EnviroLink to provide administrative work and utility billing and collections services to the town. We're waiting on updated financial information from the third-party bookkeeper. before we can proceed with the evaluations for that contract. The town's auditor has provided to me, and we've signed a amended contract with an estimated due date for the 2020 audit of June 30, 2021, sorry. She plans to begin field work on June 7th. And the town has also done pre-contracting documents as required for the ARPA money. So the budget message and the 2022 budget for Pikeville, there is no change in the property tax rate of 69 cents. Services are remaining constant. Town employees, compensation and benefits were at the current level. We may do some additional potential analysis that may yield some savings, but right now it's stable, no changes. The proposed budget doesn't include amounts to recruit and hire both the town clerk and a town manager. I'm proposing a town manager instead of a town administrator, which the town has prior had, just because that is generally a stronger leadership position. And that's all I've got for the ones that we own. I do not have proposed budgets for Eureka or for Spencer Mountain. Both of those charters are no longer active, and so we are not required to do budgets for those. So for the Kingstown, I had a Kingstown Sewer Fund budget amendment. This is for 2021. It's $5,000. The viable utility reserve funds are increasing by $5,000, and the sewer repairs are increasing by $5,000. And I need a vote on that. Okay. And then the rest of them for Robertsonville. There's a grant project ordinance with a company called East Carolina Antiques and Collectibles. It's a CDBG grant number 16-E-2911. The total amount of revenues for this are $173,500. 150 of it is coming from CDBG. 20,000 of it is being provided by East Carolina Antiques and Collectibles. And Robertsonville is providing 3,500 for the total 173. And 3,500 is being used for application preparation. 15,000 is for administration. And then the remaining the remaining 155,000 is for construction. And this is an ordinance that should have been done prior to this. They did not have expenditures. They've had expenditures, but they did not adopt this ordinance as they needed to.
So what are they constructing?
They are constructing or rehabbing a building that's on their main street. So it's economic development.
Okay.
So is that all three of them?
That's one of them. I've got three more now. Okay, that one was in a project ordinance fund, multi-year fund. This next one is in the electric fund. And they had insurance proceeds of $10,583 that they received when a vehicle hit a light pole. And they have an offsetting appropriation of $10,583 to repair the light pole. And then they moved funds of $350 to pay for uniforms. So that's one of them. In their water fund, they had to move funds to pay for unbudgeted expenditures of supplies that had been previously paid in August and September towards a water project. And that amount was $36.25, and there was a net, that was just a reclass, no change in the total amount of the budget. And then in the sewer fund, they had to move funds within the sewer fund line to increase appropriations for unbudgeted expenditures that were paid in August and September on the sewer project. And that was I'll tell you in a minute. That was $5,287. Then they had telephone expenses of $375 and utility management fees of $33.75. And all those changes together, they're just reclasses. There was a net decrease of 0 to the sewer fund budget. One of the things, the town of Robertsonville adopted a line item budget. We will not be doing that this year. So that's why they have so many amendments that you are currently having to approve. But we won't be, we're doing it at the functional level, which is the appropriate level for the statute. And then finally, this is the last one for the town of Robertsonville. There were revenues that were collected at the library that were not included in the current year's department budget, and expenses related to a project at the library that needed to be budgeted. So we had fines of library fines of $10,265 and donations of $1,365, and they were offset by appropriations for library projects of $11,757 and a reduction of insurance expenditures of $126. And that was an increase in budget.
Okay, and we're still under unit updates.
That was my last unit update.
Okay. With that, do I hear a motion to accept staff's recommendations for the adoption of the budget amendment for Kingstown, for a adoption of a project ordinance for Robersonville, the adoption of a budget, 4 budget amendments also for Robersonville. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second.
Paget.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk will call the roll.
Secretary Marshall,
Aye.
Secretary Penny,
Aye.
Ms. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Bass,
Aye.
Mr. Munn,
Aye.
sorry, Mr. Philbeck, Mr. Philbeck, are you there?
Aye.
Is that an aye?
Yes, aye.
Thank you. Treasurer Falwell?
Aye.
Thank you.
We'll now go to other items. Do I hear a motion to accept staff's recommendation, accept the resolutions to accept the ARPA funds for Kingstown, Robersonville, Pikeville, and Eureka?
Paula Harris, motion.
Okay. Second.
Alder Wood, second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll on accepting resolutions to accept ARPA funds for those 4 communities.
Harris and Wood. Secretary Marshall,
Aye.
Secretary Penny.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Bass,
Aye.
Mr. Munn. Paget,
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck,
Aye.
Treasurer Falwell.
Aye. We're now on to the North Carolina Capital Management Trust. I'll turn it over.
Before I get into that, I do want to make a really quick comment about all the budget work that was done by fiscal staff. I know it was a pile of paper, but it was even more hours of work that went into developing all of those budgets. So I just want to commend the staff for their good work on that. And we don't take over units that are in great shape, so developing those budgets is a challenge.
They have put in some hours doing this. Thank you, Sharon.
So the resolution before us now is to extend the current certification of the Capital Management Trust. Under statute, the trust is recertified, or a trust, an investment option is recertified every 5 years. Current certification runs out October 1st, 2021. We are asking for an extension through March 1st of 2022 to give us the option of either working with Capital Management Trust or developing an RFP for a competitive product.
And Sharon, would you remind the board members how much is in the Capital Management Trust right now, approximately?
I have to make it up if I told you. I'm sorry. It's well over $1. I'm sure. Last I heard, I think it was somewhere in the $2 billion range.
That's what I think. Members, when I was in, no matter
What was
where,
that answer from Sharon?
over 2 billion.
Okay.
Wherever I go in the state, when I have an opportunity to meet with local elected officials, obviously they are all struggling with the low amount of interest that some of these massive amounts of money are earning in fund balances. And there are some competing organizations who are vying for the opportunity to get this business. I think that this trust was established by former Treasurer Bowles, maybe even as he was the deputy treasurer, maybe. So it's been around for decades as a place to park money on a risk-free basis and have liquidity and no volatility. There are some things that happened, I guess, with Fidelity.
In the market.
Fidelity's, this is Cindy Aiken. They've been the manager since day one.
Yeah. And
It's 1980.
there are some competing products that are, as I said earlier, trying to vie for this business, but they involve more risk. And I felt like the reason this is on your agenda today, that with everything going on at LGC right now, as much as we don't like the low interest rates that these folks are earning, by the way, we have $42 billion worth of fixed income products right above where we're sitting here that we have the same problem with. That we just weren't in a position right now to put out an adequate RFP, given the fact that I don't think there's ever been an RFP on this product.
At the beginning,
At the very beginning.
What decade was that?
1985.
All right, so barely out of high school. So, and I barely got out of high school. So, anyway, my point of saying that is that that was, we just felt like instead of just extending it for another 2 years or whatever, we just put it on March 31st. And there'll be more time for staff to put out, to do something they've never done before, just do an RFP. You weren't here there, weren't you? Greg was.
She was still in high school.
No, it wasn't still in high school.
Greg was here.
Actually, yes.
Yes, he was here. Sorry.
Yeah, so, anyway, that's why I'm asking the board to vote for this and, to just extend this relationship and give us more time.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Mr. Munn, second. Any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Auditor Wood. Aye. Secretary Marshall.
Aye.
Secretary Penny.
Aye.
Ms. Harris.
Aye.
Mr. Bass.
Aye.
Mr. Philbeck.
Aye.
Treasurer Falwell.
Thank you, members. And I'm sure if it hasn't already occurred, some of these other types of vendors will be reaching out to you. I'm not giving you legal advice, but my suggestion is we're not in a quiet period, but since we've talked about this being extended on March 31st, we're probably about as close to a quiet period as we can be without actually getting an email saying we're in the quiet period. So would that be accurate? So say that as other types of folks might reach out to members of the LGC, that just keep that in mind, and also understand that anytime someone's offering you a higher yield than what we're currently experiencing, then whether it's properly articulated or not, there's a higher level of risk, and that always has to be taken into account. So we're, I guess, at our last item, and we're surprised and honored to be joined today by the chair of the Bald Head Island Authority, as well as Mrs. Raven, as well as the mayor of Bald Head Island, Village of Bald Head, there. And with that, we will be giving the LGC members just a brief update about what's going on.
Right, so this is Sharon. Again, the last item here is the questions. At last month's meeting, the staff was directed to call for and accumulate questions from LGC members to deliver to Bald Head Island Transportation Authority. And in your packet is a list of those documents, as well as a document from the Transportation Authority. I'm sorry, I listed those questions. Since this was printed, we have received a few more questions. So you have printed here most of them. We will email a complete set of the questions to everybody tomorrow. We weren't sure if we'd get more questions during the meeting today or not. So we will email the final set in the morning.
Mr. Treasurer?
Yes.
So what is the expectation of an answer to all these questions? For me to consider yes or no on this going to the bond market. A significant number of these questions, too many of these questions, are irrelevant to my decision. And it is more in the operational side of things, once somebody wins or decides or whatever. So I have no expectation that some of these questions are going to be answered because it's irrelevant to the LGC's decision, and I'm not sure how this should work. Mr. Treasurer.
Sharon, do you have any thoughts on that? Well, let me respond while I give her a chance to.
Oh, go ahead.
We have received a 16-page letter, I believe, from the Village of Bald Head, talking about their interest in being the governing body of the ferry system. That, from my reading of it, we sent it to the members when we got it, talks about governance, transparency, and those types of things. Secondly, to your point, I think that, I guess I'll ask you a question. I guess what you're asking is, and I just want to say, I know other board members have spent a lot of time on the Bald Head Isle ferry issue, but I know that Alder Wood has spent inordinate amount of time on this issue with everything else she has going on. So I want to thank her for those efforts. But I guess what you were saying is that as it comes down to the decision, that some of the questions don't even if they answered them, would not be relevant to your decision making. And then trying to pinpoint who has a responsibility of answering. That'd be the best way of saying it.
Yes. Would it be feasible or appropriate for commission members to review the questions, send the list back marked with the ones they wanted answers to?
I think that would be feasible. I'm looking at one. It says whether the seller historically has transferred its utility assets, employment of its utility employees to the village. Okay.
So
This decision, okay, it has been about the two things. It has been about making sure everybody's aware of what's going on. And then it's been about this whole assessed value versus tax value and appraised value. And some of these questions just have no relevance, no matter what the answer is, to my decision and my authority to vote. So, and I just think it is some things that have just, and we are not going to get in the business of sorting out the arguments between two organizations, nor are we going to get involved in the politics of two organizations. And if you can't work well together, that's not my problem. So getting questions through this commission that should be worked out between the two of them is on them, not us. And I don't want to spend an inordinate amount of time on either side trying to answer questions that should be worked out between the two of them. So I think that's a great suggestion that commission members, and then the other piece of it is, I'm a little frustrated with some of the questions that came through here from the village and even our commission members that have already been answered if you would just read the letters, packets that have been sent to us, whether intangible assets have been taken into account or not. No. The valuation says specifically no. Real property only. So then you're putting the authority and the village through answering questions that have already been answered. So I just think we need to look through the questions as a staff and as a commission and decide which ones are relevant to what we need to decide moving forward. The other thing I would say, I know what's coming out of this is probably a new appraisal. But if you look back through my issues with the first appraisal, if the second appraisal comes back with the same issues, I'm going to be lobbying as hard as I can for this not to go forward, because that effective life depreciation. So if you look at the analysis I did, the real difference between the assessed value and the tax value is the improvements to the real property. And then when I got into the details of how they came up with those numbers, there is so much wiggle room in there. It's not even funny. So again, more explanation behind the assumptions made, not so much judgment call without justification, and more importantly, best practices. And not having an intern, not an intern, but a trainee do it. And that effective life based on the useful life and asset, 5 years was just does not make sense. And I can see how the improvements price got driven way up by using an effective life. So those two things, I think we need to go through and pick out the questions that are relevant to this commission and this staff's decision. Secondly, Again, I think all the holes I saw in the first evaluation needs to be plugged, or I want to be in the same place I was with the first evaluation.
Mr. Treasurer,
Yes.
there are only a few things that this group needs to make findings on that are set forth in statute. We deal with it every time we do one of these. I totally agree with Auditor Wood that there are a lot of questions that maybe rehashing old issues are not relevant, but are not relevant to the issues that we have to decide. Overall, transparency has been a concern. That's not generally in the statute, but I think that is an aspect that has been evolving with more transparency. And but again, if we can go back to the issues that we're supposed to decide, is this revenue bond necessary and expedient? Well, it's going to be necessary. I think that that is answered. The proposed amount of such revenue bond is adequate and not excessive. I think that is one of the key essential, the aspects of the amount of and the appraisal and what is in it, that the statute tells us how it's supposed to be, the things that are supposed to be in it, not all these various forms of how an appraisal can be done. The next is the project feasible. Well, yes, the statute tells us that, and commission's been created. The authority's debt management procedures and practices are good. Well, that is something that the statute tells us. I mean, they don't have a track record, but they tell us a little bit about being able to acquire and how the estimate's supposed, or how the evaluation's supposed to be done, and then giving them something else for operating. So that's the feasibility aspect of it. And then can the revenue bonds be marketed as a reasonable interest cost to the authority? That'll be determined as they go to market or as they get closer. I think the issues about the appraisal are the key one, and that eliminates a whole lot of the questions, and the directives of what this appraisal has to be needs to have some narrow boundary lines, and then we can go forward and have maybe some information in the next month or so, because I read from other stuff that negotiations have been going on between the two entities about securing, they've got 3, I think, or maybe down to 2 appraisal groups, and so they already have done the preliminary work. So that's my thought about it. And again, we could spend another day and a half going over all the issues that have been raised, but many of them are not relevant to the considerations that we're charged with doing.
Well, I think, Mr. Treasurer, is there not something in our statute also that says if we're aware of extenuating or some, if we become aware that can play into that?
Well, Auditor Wood, this is Cindy Aiken. If you were referring to the same part of the statute which lists what the commission may consider, the commission may inquire into and give consideration to any other matters it may believe to have a bearing on whether the issue should be approved. Is that what you're?
It's exactly what I'm referring to. And when you have a gentleman that tells us point blank that all of the meetings have been had and many citizens were not made aware of all this, and he told us a untruth, I think that has a bearing on this situation. So that piece of it about making sure that everybody that's going to be affected by this has had the proper, I think, so that piece of the transparency, I agree, has a bearing on this. I think we may have worked through all that. I think we did, but again, that's one of the issues on that last piece that I think had a tremendous bearing on this, for the gentleman to tell me, yeah, we told everybody, nobody has any disagreement, and in reality that was an untruth, and so we were moving forward with not true information. So again, I do think that transparency piece was important.
Well, and I mentioned that being.
Secretary Marshall, when you were reading off that a moment ago, were you referring to the umbrella statute regarding the operation of the LGC, or the enabling legislation regarding this authority?
Oh, from the LGC.
Okay. And I think members received the document from the Village of Bald Head. I was not aware, and I admit this publicly, that there was an option as far as the village's right of first refusal on the ferry system. I was not aware of that until last week, I guess.
Right.
9 days ago. So that is all this is complicated. What I would like to do in the spirit of transparency is to take all the questions and all the documents. Our staff will get together, and not that we're thinking on behalf of the commission, but we'll put it into gotta have, interested in having, no longer applicable, put it in these questions in 3 different categories, and then send those out to the commission, segregated in those 3 categories, and let the commission determine if, those lists look correct.
Mr. Treasurer, what is the issue? I know there is an issue with the first right of refusal, and it comes into play in August. What is that issue?
It was news to me, so somebody like to, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not sure what year it happened, but at some point in time, the people that own the ferry system agreed that they would give the right of first refusal to the village. And that right, the village waived that right for a certain amount of time, thinking that the new authority was going to eventually buy the system. And right now, it's my understanding that right is going to expire. Well, that waiver is going to expire in August. And
So what happens when it expires?
Then basically the village will have the right of first refusal to acquire the system from the sellers.
So
in other words, you have to sell it first or offer it first to the village.
Rather than the authority.
So if we don't hear this prior to August, then the authority would not be in first position. The village becomes in first position. Is that correct?
Well,
unless the village were to sign would agree to another waiver, but I think spiritually what you're saying is correct. But until I read this 16-page letter, I was not aware that was even part of this whole transaction.
Mr. Treasurer, which is another thing that just bugs me, that these things come before us and pieces and parts that would make this a consideration different that we never had. And again, that's where the transparency piece comes into play for me.
Any other questions?
Well, Secretary Marshall, this is bothersome to me to learn that there is a time clock deadline, and there has been a lot of questions asked that are going to take a lot of time to answer, that push our back up to the wall because there's legal rights on the line here. There's a statute. I'm not sure that right of refusal, does the statute override it, creating the commission to, if it's not mentioned in there, I don't think. Cindy can tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, playing out the clock is not really a very fair way of dealing if that's what all of these miscellaneous questions are intended to do.
Playing out the clock is not the intention. And it was the reason that I said we need to go through and clean up the questions.
Beth, I'm not suggesting that you are playing out the clock. You're not the one that are posing these questions that go way back into, what was done with employee X 15 years ago, those kinds of things.
That's what I'm saying. It's not relevant. It is not relevant.
There are plenty of not relevant questions that have been asked.
Well,
And I would,
Secretary Marshall, I want to be crystal clear with you. I didn't know there was a clock. I didn't know until I got this 16-page letter and read about this right of first refusal. I didn't know it existed. Period.
Well, that's an
Treasurer.
issue of transparency with the folks and us.
right.
Yes, Secretary Penny.
Yeah, I would agree with virtually everybody here. But the fact is that I'm not sure. I'm with Secretary Marshall. I'm not sure that the right of refusal is something that is clearly a contractual matter that can be. While I think the city may have the right, or the village may have the first right of refusal, I'm not sure that with the legislature, when they passed a subsequent law, did not modify the village's authority to exercise that right. And I think that's going to be an issue. All I'm saying is after the deadline, there are going to be a bunch of questions that may end up resulting in years of wrangling and litigation, and render all this discussion we're talking about pretty moot. So if we can do something that moves this thing up or down before that happens, it is better. If we can't, then I think we may become irrelevant in the considerations.
Thank you. Thank you for that update.
Well, question, yeah, when do the commission members want the questions?
When can you have them ready?
So you're asking staff to categorize these into must answer, no longer relevant. What was the
Nice
third
to know.
Nice to know,
Nice
and no
to
longer
know.
relevant.
And you want staff to decide that and then you're going to check it?
Pass it out to commission members to see if we agree, or somebody wants something in another bucket and justification why.
And then what?
And then the authority goes and does it.
And we'll present them to we'll forward them to the authority.
And all
And are
interested
you
parties.
going to want the parties to answer must have answered and the nice to know?
Must have.
Must have.
First two categories.
First two categories.
When
And
do we
then,
want
For the sake of
so what's going to end up out of this, as I said, is a new appraisal. And it needs to be an appraisal that doesn't have all the fluffy stuff in the other one. And the numbers are tied down better, more justified. And things that I've questioned, and there's no reason to put it in like that 15%, whatever, entrepreneurial, whatever. If there's no real solid justification, then it needs to just go away. But show it with the same questionable items and the questionable judgment calls and the questionable numbers given an appraiser's qualifying statements like the one I wrote. Everything anybody tells me, I'm taking it as the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and it's going here as if it was true. So again, that needs to be avoided. Even though I know it's allowed, it needs to be avoided.
So,
Mary Nash, Treasurer. Mary Nash, would like to talk to you.
That was it.
So we can have the questions Monday? Is that reasonable?
Monday.
Okay, all right, we'll have them out to commission members on Monday.
And then what's our turnaround time?
Well,
Well, when do we want to get them?
A week from today would be fair.
When do we want to get the questions to the authority? And we'll work backwards from there.
I don't know.
Friday of that week.
That's what I was thinking. That's all
so
I want to take them and work on them immediately.
if by next Friday we get the questions to the authority, do they then have enough time to get those to their appraiser? If they're, it sounds like they're trying to get on the August, at the earliest, the August agenda. Is that correct? Would they have enough time to get that and get an appraisal done by that time?
It's not my problem. It's not my problem. Here's where we are today. This is the best we can do. And whatever the authority or the village does between now and whenever, it's on them. Because I am not going with the appraisal I got or anything like it. I am not going to go along with that, nor do I think the staff of the commission's going along with that. So we give them what we need straightened out before I will vote, approve, and that's all I can do.
What I can say is that I'm confident that the transparency, there's been three issues about this: the governance, the transparency, and the valuation. I'm completely confident the transparency and the sunshine on this transaction is getting where it needs to be. And I think that's a very positive. So.
But we can only control what the staff and what we can do. After that, it's up to the village and the authority to get together whatever they need to get back on the agenda.
Mr. Treasurer?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think I received any information from the village regarding this right of refusal, a 16-page communication. Would you please submit that to everybody else?
And in our packet.
Wait a minute.
Isn't it the thing I got right here?
Secretary Marshall, all that was directed by me to be sent to you. So we're about to get an answer as to whether that happened or not.
It would have been via email yesterday?
No,
Our packet.
it was in the original packet that went out last Wednesday. There's two things, I think. One is there's a letter from the chair. At the end of that letter, she asked, well, there's a letter to the village. She asked the village to pay the expiration of the waiver until December. And then I think the village responded last week, maybe Thursday or Wednesday, Friday, saying that they were not going to waive, that they were not going to extend the waiver.
Well, I saw a reference to the waiver, but there was no filed document, and certainly did not see any response if that just came in after the packet was sent out.
Yeah, the actual document I don't think has been sent to everyone. I'm trying to think. I know that came in. I saw it because it was filed with the county clerk.
I've seen it.
Secretary Marshall, I'm going to be kind and restrained here and tell you that it came to me last week and we started talking about 47 pages and 64 pages and 84 pages. So I know very clearly that we had conversation. I said, send it all. And so we'll figure out whether you have it or what you don't have, or where that, if it did break down in our office. We'll figure that out for you, okay?
When we are, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
We tried to send your packet out on Wednesday, but then on the 27th, which was Thursday, we got these extra letters from the authority and then the village, and then the village again, whatever. Go ahead, Mr. Beth.
When we are discussing governance, I understand the transparency. I understand we're talking about, the authority going out to get a new appraisal to deal with valuation. When we're discussing governance, what does that mean? I'm not sure I'm clear on what we mean by governance.
Well, transparency goes into governance, number one. But number two, there's the enabling legislation set up this authority, which is a governing authority. The Village of Bald Head is a governing authority. And to look at, which one of these, I don't want to use the word bidders, but which one of these entities has the right governance in place? But that's all it is, nothing more.
So when we say governance, do you mean, are we talking about whether the authority purchases the ferry or the village purchases the ferry? Is that essentially what we mean by governance?
Pretty much, yes.
And again, it seems to me that the enabling legislation seems to direct it to the authority.
Well, the authority's the one that went into this other agreement. Or no, the sellers.
That's correct. Mr. Munn?
With regard to governance, both of these entities will be required to comply with the local government statutes regarding open meetings and fiscal responsibility. I think that's probably even on both sides. The question I think still that needs to be answered is the value of this asset. And if we could focus on that, because I think it's fundamentally what the town is concerned about, that this is too much debt and there's not enough money to be able to deal with other capital needs, and it's just the amount of money's wrong. But and to get and focus really on the appraisal would give us that answer, and I think take us a long way toward a solution. The governance issue, I think you could probably, they're probably both able to do it. The county could do it. I mean, there's a lot of, the General Assembly pointed us this way, but I still think it's the value question and the appraisal that needs to be focused.
I totally agree, Mr. Munn. All right, we will close our meeting by going around the horn. Before doing so, I just wanted to mention, since Mr. Bass is with us, that in the past, on many occasions, I've always talked about the unfunded healthcare and pension liabilities of our local government units, and haven't done that lately because we've had a lot of other stuff to talk about. But just wanted to applaud Currituck County, which made a decision recently to take, I think, $1 million toward their fund balance and put toward the pension and healthcare liabilities. And we put out a press release about that last week that many received, and just to give you some perspective on that, City of Winston-Salem did this 32 years ago. So the City of Winston-Salem's unfunded healthcare liability is, I think, about $89 million, and they have $72 million to pay for that. And Mayor Vinroot, the City of Winston-Salem doing 28 years ago, and started putting money toward these unfunded pension and healthcare liabilities. So now Currituck County has done it. And I'm signing applications about every week for our AgPIP product, which is the account that we use for people to put money in these unfunded liabilities. And I just, I know it's something that all of you heard me talk about ad nauseum, but those of you who are from a military background understand the term I means I hear you, I understand what you've told me, and I'm going to do something about it. And Currituck County did that. They just didn't hear it. They understood it. They did something about it. I think that's going to be, these retirees are going to happen. If you watch 60 Minutes this week, you heard that children that are born today, 50% of the children in the world that are maybe in the world, in the United States, I can't remember, but 50% of those that are born today are expected to have a life expectancy. So when you start talking about unfunded liabilities, and especially as it relates to the biggest expense of the counties and cities, which the LGC governs to a large degree, the biggest expense are the pension expense, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and interest and principal on the debt. So when you have less people paying into these systems and that are not paying in, which is a mathematical fact, when you have interest rates as low as they are, a mathematical fact, when you have people, especially women, who are expected to get more retirement checks than they did paychecks as an employee of the local units or as the state government, that's a fact, based on their life expectancies, and no minimum retirement age in this plan, which is a fact. You can see why the decisions that people like Currituck County made are very, very important. So I just wanted to share that. Lastly, on my part, before I go around the horn, she's been telling me this for at least 5 years, that she is it's all about her and she's the woman of the decade. And but now we actually have an actual newspaper that honors Secretary Auditor Wood as the 20 Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. So my only disappointment is that she didn't wear just one of her gloves on this picture. Didn't have to wear both of them, but just one of them would have been great. But Secretary Marshall brought this up at the Council of State meeting this morning, and I just want to. There's a lot of great women in this organization, and a lot of great women on this LGC. So I think once a day, everybody deserves a standing ovation. So let's give Auditor Wood a standing ovation. Any other board members?
Treasurer, I have an announcement just before everybody adjourns. Just a reminder, we have budget hearings June 7th, 5:30 and 7, June 14th at 5:30 and 7. Those are public hearings that require a statute. We have to have a quorum of the LGC present.
Is that on my schedule?
Those are all on your schedule. And then a special LGC meeting on June 22nd at 2:30 to vote on all the budgets that were presented today. And then our next regular meeting won't be until July 13th.
I have a question. Have we officially changed our meeting times to 1:30?
We talked about that a little bit earlier. We have, unless there's strong objection, until we can sort of clear the calendar a little bit.
Okay.
And
Sharon, did you say the next regular meeting was July 13th?
Yes, ma'am.
After that? Okay.
Sharon, this is Viola. I can get on the 7th, but I'll have to be off by 7 o'clock because we have our regular board meeting.
All right, I think we're good for our quorum on the 7th. Thank you.
This is Mike Philbeck. Just a reminder that my oldest grandchild graduates from high school this weekend in Texas, and I will not be able to attend the 7th meeting.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
My oldest one is 18, and I have one born last week, so I have a pretty big spread in my grandchildren's ages. May I ask one question just for, I may have missed something, but in reading the Kingstown budget message and budget, I think their current property tax rate is 48 cents. The reason I know that is because it's higher than every municipalities in Cleveland County, and we have 15, except Shelby's. And in reading that budget message, it says the revenue neutral rate is 42 cents, but I'm not clear, are we changing their rate to 42 cents or are we not changing it?
We're not changing the rate. In a reval year, they're required to publish the revenue neutral rate, but they're not required to adopt it.
Well, there's nothing in the budget ordinance that tells what the rate is, and I thought you have to set the rate in the ordinance.
You do. If we missed that.
I'm looking at it. I'm looking at,
And what that tells me is that, and I'm sorry, my phone's ringing, I'll cut it low as I can. What that tells me is, I don't know, I know Kingstown has needs and they may need to stay at 48 cents, but I also know that those are mostly not wealthy people there. And it tells me the average house increased about 15% if 42 cents would be revenue neutral. So I don't know where it's at. I just couldn't tell. For the document was so simplistic, I really could not tell what was going on there.
The,
five. Yeah, we got it.
the tax rate is set at 48 cents in section 5 of the ordinance on page 2 of the budget ordinance.
Okay, then I missed that when I read through it. If that was in the packet I got. And it says revenue neutral rate would get them the same amount of revenue they got last year. That's not my understanding of the statutory meaning of the revenue neutral rate. Doesn't it get them the average increase that they would have had since the last reval? Is what the statutory revenue neutral rate is.
We'll research that and get back to you on that. I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure that's right. I've been through that hoop many times.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm done.
Just another reminder, Mr. Philbeck, you might talk with an accent, but you don't think with one.
I'm not sure what that means, Mr. Treasurer.
What that means is you're paying attention to the details, and that was all complimentary. Is all what that means.
Okay. I just know I have enough friends in Kingstown. If they get a 15% increase in their property taxes on average, I'm going to hear from them if they find out I voted for it.
Thank you. Any other board members? Okay. Hearing none, I'll accept them. Oh, Sharon,
Cindy.
Cindy.
Cindy Aiken. So I have in my notes that Auditor Wood has asked that for the city of Wilkesboro, we have the timeline of hopefully dates of the audits to be finished. And you specifically said you wanted that reflected in the minutes. So the written version is the official record. So instead of asking you now, if there are members who want to have other special things noted in the minutes that are not action, that were not action items, because that's generally what we stick to, the action items, please let me know by email or phone or whatever you want to do. And so I can get those in the minutes. So for Scotland Net, for example, or what we talked about for, I don't know, anything else. And I have the recording. I can go back and pick up anything I didn't get notes on. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Wood. It's all about you.
This is all about me? No. Again, I say it often. I'm a very, very ordinary woman that God has allowed to do some extraordinary things. So I'm just honored with the award and love my job. Thank you for the recognition. That was kind of you. And you too, Secretary Marshall. You've always been a big supporter when I win an award, and just thank you for bringing that up this morning. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Secretary Penny? You lost it. I'll go back. Ms. Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Bass?
Aye.
Mr. Mudd?
Aye.
Mayor Paget? Mr. Philbeck?
Aye.
Treasurer Falwell?
Aye.
That's enough. It passes.
Thank you.